Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight to talk about Biscayne Bay and all of the beautiful benefits that we get from having clean water here in our community. I am Rachel Silverstein. I am the Executive Director and Waterkeeper of local nonprofit Miami Waterkeeper, and we are going to talk tonight, along with our amazing partners at Compass, about being clean water savvy in your homes. And I'm going to run through a little bit of why that's so important, using the fish kill that happened last summer as an example of what's really at stake here. We're going to hear from Madeline Romanello, who is top-selling Compass agent. She's going to talk a little bit about how our worlds are connected and what you can all do to help support our clean water economy and our beautiful environment and culture that's centered around our backyard in Biscayne Bay. So Casey, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself. My teammate, Casey Dresbach.
Hello, everyone. My name is Casey Dresbach. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator for Miami Waterkeeper, and I'm going to be behind the scenes today, facilitating questions that you may have and helping guide conversation. And we do have some exciting links to share, which Compass put together for us. So they have created a custom hat that says Save the Bay, and it's really, really nice. And all the proceeds go to Miami Waterkeeper, which we're very grateful for. And in addition, we've collaborated with Compass in creating a clean water friendly home guide. So basically, you can all leave this feeling educated and empowered to be a clean water friendly homeowner, but also have the tools to do so. And of course, you can always reach out to Miami Waterkeeper and any of us for any questions or guiding information. But I'm going to include those two links in the chat, so you'll have that there. And yeah, and then we can pass it to Madeline after that.
Yeah, Madeline, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself now as well.
Okay, sure. Thank you so much. I'm Madeline Romanello with Compass. I'm a real estate broker there for the last, 5 years already almost. And I'm very excited actually to learn more about this and to be on the panel. And it's kind of very eye-opening. And I think realtors really need to know this stuff and make everybody aware of it. So very excited. Thank you so much.
Good, fantastic. And you have a beautiful water view behind you for us all to appreciate. Compass put together a really beautiful brochure with some really key tips. Working with Casey, putting together some of the materials we had. And of course, the hats are adorable. Who doesn't love a manatee in a hat? Yeah. So everybody needs to get one. All right, perfect. Casey, if you want to start sharing, we can launch into some of the presentation. Again, while Casey's getting this going, just a reminder, you can.
Oh, they're nice, the hats.
Yeah, aren't they cool?
Yeah, very good. Love that.
I'll give Casey a minute to put it into presenter mode or presentation. Yeah. Can you guys still see me too?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. And I just need to adjust my screen. All right, perfect. Well, as I mentioned, I'm the Executive Director and Waterkeeper for local nonprofit Miami Waterkeeper. And if you go to the next slide, Case, we are focused on ensuring swimmable, drinkable, and fishable water for all. And the right to water that is safe for swimming, drinking, and fishing is a right that is given to all of us in the Clean Water Act. And so a big piece of what Miami Waterkeeper does is ensure those rights for all of us. And we do that specifically by focusing on three focus areas. The next slide, Case. Specifically, of course, clean water, but also the habitats and sea level rise issues. And of course, sea level rise issues affect the habitats where wildlife live, like corals and seagrass and mangroves, and whether or not we have clean water. And I'll talk a little bit about that today as well. And then we have 3 approaches to make change in these focus areas. We do outreach and education work. We have 2 key or signature programs in this area that I want to highlight tonight because some of you on this call may be interested in joining them. The first is for high school students. It's called our Junior Ambassador Program. And that is an environmental leadership training program. And actually the applications to start next school year are open right now. So if you know any high school students that might be interested or benefit from this, it's a completely free program. Please reach out and let us know. And we're happy to share the application with you, or Casey can drop it in the link. We also have our 1,000 Eyes on the Water program, and that's for people of any age. And that will train you to observe, document, and report pollution that you might see going about your daily life. And during COVID, we made that online. So it's now totally virtual. It takes about an hour to complete, and it's completely free as well. And we have had a 600% increase in the number of pollution reports we've received from the public. And because we're such a small team, we can't be everywhere at once. So we really rely on you to tell us if there's something that needs attention on the water. We also do scientific research, and we sample the water at 22 different locations every single week. And we post that information on a free app called Swim Guide that you can download, and it will tell you red or green whether or not it's safe to go swimming at your favorite beaches that we know you love to go to. We also publish peer-reviewed literature and work a lot with universities on key research questions. And then finally, we do advocacy work. So we do policy advocacy, like supporting the fertilizer ordinance that just passed in the county today that I will share more information about with you. And we will actually go to court if environmental laws are being broken, if absolutely necessary. So welcome to beautiful Biscayne Bay. It's our backyard, and it is really the jewel that we've built our city around. It's home to Biscayne National Park and the Biscayne Bay Aquatic Preserve. And next slide. It's one of the best sailing and bone fishing locations in the world. It brings billions of dollars to our economy every year and supports a thriving tourism and real estate industry. Of course, this is why everybody wants to live here in Miami, because we have such beautiful, clean water. Next slide. So especially this year, our beautiful waterways have really given us an escape and a sense of calm and tranquility during, coronavirus lockdown days. And a lot of people used the bay as a place to get away and to enjoy and connect with nature. And you can skip to the next slide. So it really is our economy, it's our culture, and it's our environment. And here, because so many people are using Biscayne Bay, but only 2 sites were being monitored every week, we actually started a program to test water quality every week, as I mentioned. And next slide. Just to introduce you to one of our water samplers here, this is Sam. She's our environmental technician, and she monitors the water in Biscayne Bay every single week so that we can tell you whether or not it's safe to swim. Last summer, on Monday, August 10th, Sam was out sampling at Morningside Park, and she started to notice a few dozen dead fish in the area. This is what she saw. So this is little white flecks, or a few dozen what we call toadfish, that are fish that live in the seagrass in Biscayne Bay floating on the surface. Next slide. This is Catherine Micasell. She and her swim group, the Dolphins and Rainbows swim group, actually swim off of Morningside Park every day. That Monday morning, their group was meeting and they went out swimming. Next slide. And they quickly started to notice that something was very wrong. They started to see white flecks in the water, which they realized were dead fish surrounding them. And they saw thousands of dead and dying marine life, and they reported the situation to us right away. Next slide. This became really the first community report of what would become the largest recorded fish kill in Biscayne Bay history.
Wow.
Next case. We quickly got dozens and dozens of reports, actually over 400 individual photos from the public of dead and dying marine life. And you can kind of flick through the next couple of slides and then stop there. You can just get a sense of what the bay turned into, that this sparkling jewel had really turned into a graveyard. And next slide, Casey. Let me shrink this so we can see. So we also got these reports that wildlife were behaving very strangely and congregating in unusual groups like these stingrays. They were at the surface kind of gasping for air and really struggling to breathe.
Oh.
And next slide. So these animals that typically live in the bottom of the bay were all seen at the surface really trying to get air. And next slide. After a few days, we started to get reports that the water turned into these thick green mats of algae, especially on the waterfront up by like Sans Souci canals, around North Bay Village, Keystone Marina. Next slide. And our beautiful water had turned into this thick green mat of algae. And we have never had algae blooms like this before here in Miami. And this has happened in other places around Florida, but not here. Not in our beautiful water that we have in Miami that we know and love. This is really a tipping point that we crossed and that we and other scientists have been warning about for years. The next slide. So our team really quickly sprang into action, and we have a network of amazing people like all of you who love our bay, and we started gathering all of these hundreds of reports from where the fish kill was happening. We started tracking all of the photos, and our program manager, Colin, started inputting them into this Google map where you can see day by day where we were getting reports from and how the fish kill started around Morningside Park and then spread out from there. And this became really critical map to even having, our state agencies and the county understand where the epicenter of the fish kill was and where they should be deploying resources. We also had, in the next slide, we had our teams out sampling. And this is Dr. Elizabeth Kelly. She's our water quality research manager with Miami Waterkeeper. And here she's holding a new piece of scientific equipment that we were just lucky enough to be able to buy 2 of. They're very special tools and they give us a lot of information about our water quality. And we were sending algae samples to the state labs to see if they were toxic varieties, which thankfully they were not. And next slide. And we were getting from every corner of the region, people wanting to know what they could do to help. So this was really amazing and special. And we knew we had to pick up all of these dead fish because they were making the situation worse in the water as they decompose. But would people really be willing to go out and pick up these decomposing fish in the middle of a pandemic in August in Miami? The answer for everybody is yes, definitely. The community really showed up for the water, and this is Vice Mayor Marvin Wilmoth of North Bay Village picking up fish, doing an amazing job. The Fertile Earth Foundation volunteered to put out compost bins so that we could compost the fish. And Kayla, who's our marketing manager, volunteered to rent a U-Haul truck to go get the bins and bring them to the places where they were needed. And this is City of Miami Commissioner Ken Russell disposing of a stone crab that he picked up that had washed up. And people really, they love our water, and that became overwhelmingly clear to us. It was an incredible silver lining that came out of the fish kill. Next slide. So from the first day of the crisis, we set up daily briefing calls with the scientific community and the agencies like Miami-Dade County, the Biscayne Bay Aquatic Preserve staff, FIU, and everyone really pitched in to work together, and the flow of information was really fast. And we've actually continued to meet with the scientific community, which is another silver lining that came out of this, is we now all talk regularly. And some people have spent their whole careers working on Biscayne Bay issues and not communicating with other researchers on some of these similar topics. So right now, what we've been working on in these calls we've been convening is putting together a plan for if this were to ever happen again, so we're not caught off guard. Everybody knows who's researching what data they're gathering, where we have resources like boats and other types of equipment that we can deploy really quickly. Next slide. We also put together a coalition consensus statement from the scientific community about exactly what happened during the fish kill. Next slide. But we were still feeling really, I guess, helpless and frustrated that there wasn't more we could do to help the marine life that we saw struggling and gasping for air. So during a late night brainstorming session, our general counsel, Kelly Cox, and myself came up with this kind of crazy, like Hail Mary idea that maybe we could use the county's fire boats to aerate or add more oxygen to the stagnant water that was causing the situation. So we called Port Miami Director Juan Curla, and the next morning the fire boats were there to help. And they were deployed in areas where we had the most reports of struggling marine life from the public. So again, it all comes down to what the public were reporting and seeing. And in the next slide. We also called Mayor Suarez from the city of Miami. He immediately agreed to convert the city's stormwater pumps into life-saving emergency aerators at these 3 hard-hit parks. And preliminary data says that these interventions may have actually worked, and they seem to have improved conditions and stopped the death of the marine life, at least in these areas. But we never want to have to do this kind of thing again. And I want to be very clear about that. This is absolutely putting the bay on life support. And what we need to do is to really address the disease that was causing this problem. So let's talk about what that was and how we can fix it. So why did this happen? Well, specifically, it happened because of low oxygen levels. And like us, fish and other wildlife, they need oxygen to breathe. But during the fish kill, the scientists recorded the oxygen levels in the bay were literally 0%. So the fish and wildlife had literally suffocated in place. But why did we have low oxygen levels in the bay? One word for that: pollution, specifically nutrient pollution. So nutrients are things like nitrogen and phosphorus that make our plants grow on land, but when they get into the water, they over-fertilize the microscopic algae, and they can turn clear water brown and lead to fish kills. So for this part of northern Biscayne Bay where we saw the fish kill happen, there's 4 major inputs of nutrients: septic, stormwater, sewer, and fertilizer. Next slide. So these inputs really increase the bacteria, and it fuels the algae to grow in the bay. So that turns our beautiful clear water into brown cloudy water, and it can kill off the seagrass, and it can use up all the oxygen that the fish and wildlife need to live. So it makes it really hard for the fish to breathe. And when conditions get really bad, and this is usually combined with hot water when the weather gets warm and maybe low wind, because warm water naturally holds less oxygen, the fish can actually struggle to breathe and have low dissolved oxygen conditions. If it gets really bad, you end up with fish kills, which then, as we saw, release nutrients and bacteria into the water. And if you keep clicking, that can cause the algae blooms that we saw, which themselves can decompose, and this cycle continues. And if you click one more time, and then again, this can also cause a die-off of the seagrass. And seagrass also creates oxygen during the day, just like plants do on land. And so losing the seagrass can make the whole ecosystem really vulnerable to these low dissolved oxygen conditions. And on the next slide, I will show you that the seagrass die-off is exactly what's happened in Biscayne Bay. So this is the same area that we saw the fish kill, but it's back in 2011. And all of this dark area north of the Julia Tuttle is actually the seagrass. And if you press again, you can see what happens by 2016. In just 5 years, we lost over 80% of the seagrass in that basin. So I don't think it's a coincidence that we had that seagrass dying off at the same time we saw that fish kill, because you lose a lot of the resiliency in the system to be able to tolerate stress and hot water when you don't have the seagrass there making the oxygen. And so why are we losing the seagrass? Again, it all comes back to, oh, next slide. It all comes back to these 4 inputs: septic, sewer, stormwater, and fertilizer. So let's go through each of these, and we can talk about what we hope to accomplish to move the needle in these issues this year. So fertilizer overuse is probably the easiest one to deal with because it doesn't require major infrastructure developments, just behavior change. And if you go to the next slide. So we've actually been working for the last 2 years to develop a fertilizer ordinance for South Florida. The basic tenets of it are not to use fertilizer during the summer months because it's so rainy. Almost as soon as you put the fertilizer on the ground, it's rained and it's washed all the fertilizer down the drain or into a canal if you live on the water or in the bay. And so that's why we recommend that between May 15th and October 31st for Miami, so we have a very long rainy season, just don't use fertilizer at all. It's not helping your plants. It's not improving your landscaping. It's really wasting time and money and causing water pollution issues. We also recommend using at least 65% slow release nitrogen fertilizer and no phosphorus. So our soils are so rich in phosphorus that you really don't need to apply it here in South Florida. We've really been going city by city, passing ordinances that enshrine these tenants into a fertilizer ordinance. And so the city of Miami, the village of Key Biscayne, West Miami, Miami Beach, North Bay Village, Coral Gables, and others have already passed a fertilizer ordinance. And then the exciting news is, if you go to the next slide, that this week on Tuesday, we worked with Mayor Levine Cava, Commissioner Higgins, Commissioner Regalado, Heyman, and Sosa, who co-sponsored a fertilizer ordinance that became law on Tuesday. After years of work, Miami-Dade County now has the strongest fertilizer ordinance in the state. So we're really excited about this. This is a huge step and a big water win. And again, represents years of work on this topic. But what we really need now and where we need help from everybody is this is almost impossible to enforce. It's really a messaging piece for the public, and we need everybody's help in communicating and spreading the word about these regulations and how to be a smart fertilizer user. And again, this is really win-win-win because we're not asking you to sacrifice your green lawn or your beautiful landscaping. It's just a matter of eliminating the overuse of fertilizer, a fertilizer that's not being used by your plants and that's getting into our water. So now we move on to the slightly tougher issues that do take some infrastructure investments, our septic tanks. And next slide. So we have over 100,000 septic tanks still in Miami-Dade County. We've known for 70 years that they are polluting Biscayne Bay. But right up until today, we're still allowed to put in new septic tanks in urban areas right next to the bay and surrounding our waterways. Septic tanks work because they need at least 2 feet of dry ground between the bottom of the tank and the top of the water table in order to properly sanitize the waste. But because of sea level rise, our water table is so high that over half of the septic tanks in the county don't have that necessary 2 feet. And so the waste isn't being properly treated. And because we have this very porous limestone geology here in South Florida, the waste gets really easily moved into the water table and into our waterways. Next slide. So this is an expensive problem, but it doesn't all have to be taken care of all at once. We have to have a plan and we have to have some funding mechanisms to do this in order to continue living here. It's absolutely critical. I'm on septic as well. So it's a difficult thing as, a homeowner. All of Coral Gables is on septic, for example. All of South Coconut Grove is on septic. South Miami, other whole communities are on septic. So as a homeowner, I can't go rip up miles of road to connect to the nearest sewer main. But what we can do is to talk to our elected officials about prioritizing doing these septic to sewer conversions and bringing this infrastructure into the areas where it's needed. And Miami really developed very quickly before the sewer lines were laid. So we put in all of this development on septic with the idea, oh, one day we'll bring in the sewer and we'll just get rid of these septic tanks later. But that's never happened. And so now we have this problem where we have all of these failing septic tanks that we really need to make these infrastructure investments into. And it's very important. So we're very pleased that Miami-Dade County has this year made securing funding for septic to sewer conversion their top legislative priority. So we're hoping to start to see the needle move on this issue. We have a lot of information on our website about septic as well. So leaks and spills in our sewage system is another source of pollution getting into our water. Next slide, and you can play the video if you can. If not, no problem. But much of the infrastructure we have is over 50 years old and needs to be repaired. We have cracked pipes, and And this was a multi-million-gallon leak under a bridge in North Bay that a community member spotted on his kayak and reported. And this is another reason why the Thousand Eyes on the Water program, I don't know if the video is going to play. But you can see like bubbling water under the bridge in the video that a kayaker did report. And this is another reason why the Thousand Eyes on the Water program is so important, because a lot of times it is members of the public that report these issues, and that's the only way to get them taken care of. So we really do need your eyes on the water. And next slide. So the last of these 4 nutrient sources is stormwater. And next. So stormwater causes pollution and also flooding. Any rainwater that's not absorbed into the ground goes down the storm drain and into a canal or the bay, where it carries chemicals and grease and pet waste and debris into our water. And next. So our stormwater system really needs to be upgraded to work with sea level rise conditions. And you guys probably recognize this from different areas around Miami where there's no rain, but you see flooded streets. And what happens is when the water level gets higher, it actually is moving backwards up the storm drain system and bringing water from the bay or the ocean into your street. So the system that used to work by gravity just isn't functioning anymore. And so we really need to work on these infrastructure improvements to make the stormwater sea level rise ready. Next. We also need more locations that can absorb and clean water naturally, like having it run through the ground or a park or a swale, and to have as much unpaved surface as possible to absorb the water so that it flows through the ground and gets cleaned before it gets into the bay. So this will allow us to continue to enjoy our beautiful bay. Next. So this fish kill might be over, but these pollution sources are not yet fixed, and summer is coming. So we have been actively preparing for the possibility that we have another fish kill this summer, although we really hope that we do not. So we really need to take swift intervention now. And I've laid out some of our priorities as an organization, and we invite you to get involved in those. There's lots of ways, and I'm going to go over that in your personal life. You can, oh, sorry, if you go back one. In your personal life that you can do, and that you can do as getting involved with Miami Waterkeeper. So first, how to be a responsible homeowner. Definitely check out information on our website and the beautiful Compass brochure that they have produced with some of these tips to be a responsible and water safe homeowner. So you want to get your septic tank inspected at least every 3 years, more or less. And that's one way. While you have a septic tank, you can be a responsible septic owner. You can wash your car at a commercial car wash instead of at your home, so that the soap and other things don't go down the drain, because they have special, or they should have special catchments that catch any water with any kind of chemicals in it. Of course, as we talked about, don't fertilize between May 15th and October 31st. Use at least 65% slow release fertilizer, and don't use any fertilizer with nitrogen in it. You don't need it. You can do your best to reduce single-use plastics. We have this awesome, this was not planned, but I will show you the Miami Waterkeeper water bottle that I take everywhere with me that I love. You can actually order them online, not this exact one, but ones just like it. And that can really go a long way. If you reduce your single-use plastics, we also reduce what ends up in the environment and in our waterways as well. And then you can eliminate or limit the use of chemicals on your property, in your yard, herbicides, other kinds of things that affect wildlife and could be getting into the water and causing water pollution issues. Pick up after your pets too. That's another good one from the brochure. That's very important. And planting native plants is a great way to have them absorb nutrient pollution, and limits the amount of like chemicals and fertilizers and water you need to use on your yard. It makes your very low impact yard very easy to maintain, and it always looks very beautiful, because these plants are supposed to live in Miami. And they help pollinators. You'll have a backyard full of butterflies and flowers, and there's some really special native plants we have here. We're very lucky with our native plant selection. Next. So a couple ways you can get involved with Miami Waterkeeper. As I mentioned, you can take our Thousand Eyes on the Water virtual training. You can take our Clean Water Home quiz on our website under additional resources. We also have a lot of curricula on that page if you have kids. There are tons of different curricula that we have created that you can download for free there. And there are lots of good ideas about how to talk to your kids about a lot of these issues and how to educate them. If you're a teacher, it's a great place to look as well. You can also become a member of Miami Waterkeeper, and we are revamping our membership program. At the end of the month, we'll be launching a new website with a new membership program. We're very excited about that, so be sure to check that out. You can always sponsor a program. If you're interested in corporate partnerships or sponsorships or individual, like family sponsorships, please get in touch with us. Let us know. There's lots of different options we can custom create with partners. And be sure to follow us on social media. It's the best place to stay in touch with us and to figure out what we're doing in ways that you can help with these water issues. And that's my email as well. If you want to reach out to me, I am happy to. So again, the Bay is gorgeous. It's beautiful. We've had this beautiful influx of people moving to Miami, especially in the last year. And when I speak to them, a lot of them have come here because of the beauty of our water and the fact that they can drop a kayak over their seawall and see dolphins. And it's a very special asset that our community has, and it does need to be protected. And, you know, I think Madeline is going to talk a little bit about what it means for the real estate business and for people's lives here in Miami.
Hi, well, thank you, Rachel. That was pretty intense. I didn't know it took so many people to keep, just to, you know, keep it all going. That was really actually eye-opening for me. Yes, well, I mean, I actually tried to get an idea of how many gazillions of dollars waterfront homes and condos are worth, because if you think about it, and I mean, this made me think about it, I mean, yes, of course, we have oceanfront condos or so, but most single family homes are in the Bay, along the Bay, whether it's from Keystone Point to the Venetian, you know, I mean, even to Coco Plum, it's all that area. So, and it's got to be trillions and trillions of dollars. So this is a massively important thing that actually any realtor does need to, you know, educate the buyers, because it's a massive part of their investment. I told Casey yesterday that my dad's Greek, so I grew up going every summer to Greece. Wow. In the 70s, and as a kid, and I would once I got an infection out of the water, I had some sort of kind of weird, you know, things on my body. I mean, I don't know, it was like 7 or 8, and they didn't know. And I remember the Mediterranean, and this actually is something I didn't realize till I came to the United States, because the US is very, they clean up after themselves much better, believe it or not, like compared to all the official things. There's not the littering. I think the oceans are cleaner. The Mediterranean was extremely, extremely polluted in the 70s, and then they cleaned it up. It's much better now, but there's also, you know, all the population. So here, so, you know, it's something we really got to get ahead of, for sure.
Yeah, and I don't know the statistics for the whole county, but I know at least in Coral Gables, Mayor-elect Lago is always quoting that 25% of the tax base from the city of Coral Gables comes from waterfront properties. Mm-hmm. So he was saying, you know, if we lose even like 10% of that, that's pretty catastrophic for the city. So
yeah, that's a good point. And yeah, the money hurts. And what people don't realize is that many of the homes, they're not always primary residence, they're, you know, second, third, fourth, fifth residences to be enjoyed. And so, you know, we're very lucky because these homes and also there's a lot of condos on the Bay, you know, that depend on the view and the beauty of the colors that we have. If you're not, you know, they don't use all the resources, they don't use the schools, they don't use all the infrastructure as much as somebody's living here full time. So there's also, we're getting all this money in tax base, but that is not actually wear and tear on the system per se. So I think that's another factor. One thing that I know that I always do that, but I'm a big gardener. So I love, one of the things is what I love about Florida is Florida, the real, I live in Miami Shores, like, God knows how old the oak trees are, how big, everything is lush and beautiful. And to me, that's another big part of living in South Florida. And I always tell people about the native plants, and I point that out as I'm showing homes. Oh, look at this, they have a lot of native landscaping. First of all, landscaping is very expensive. People don't realize it. You can do a kitchen much cheaper than recreate good landscaping and native landscaping. And it doesn't require all the water and stuff like that, which, always was a factor, because, I think on top of obviously the bay issues, there's also an issue with the fresh water for the growth. And that has been, talked about certainly since I got into the business, that as we grow, are we going to have enough fresh water? So that it's kind of interrelated. But so my question actually to you would be, do native plants require less fertilizer? So are they, from that perspective, also better?
They do. Less fertilizer, they're less likely to get pests. So you can use less chemicals on them, less fungicides, because they're really adapted to our region. So absolutely, you can less water, less fertilizer, less chemicals for the natives.
Yeah, that's so that's another thing that certainly this is vital for realtors. I made a few notes. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes. So, because that was, something the realtors really do need to educate. It's not just, come here, because, people have choices. And this is something actually we've learned in the luxury market is, people, South Florida, maybe Naples, maybe, obviously Palm Beach, etc. But there's been a lot more development of the kind of secondary luxury markets, etc. So people, it's much easier, well, once things get back to hopefully normal, to fly to the Caribbean or whatever. Like there's, the world is much closer. So people have choices. So when you have millions of dollars to spend and you want to be in a fantabulous place for your family, for the water sports that you enjoy, the fishing, and if your kid falls in the water, they're not going to get some, disease. I mean, seriously, that was, that made me really think. Anyway, God knows what I had. I tried to Google it once. So, but that's, people have choices, and it would really take away on many, many levels. I mean, we're seeing the growth because of the beauty and exactly what you said earlier, people having gone through COVID, and, for us, it was almost like being on vacation, right? You could do all the things that you couldn't do because, if you have a house, you were, even if you had a condo, it wasn't as bad as looking into, I don't know, the L or something in Chicago. So yes, it's vitally important. It was very eye-opening.
Yeah, fantastic. Do you get questions from folks looking at properties about whether or not they're on septic or sewer, or about sea level rise and things like that?
Yes, definitely about sea level rise. And no, the septic, I was thinking about that. I would say, honestly, I think it's more of a convenience thing. I don't think people are that environmentally aware. And like you said, you live in a neighborhood, do you live in the Gables?
I live in the Gables, and everybody's on septic.
Honestly, most people, I would say, I've been doing this 21 years, and most people maybe one or two people have said, oh, I don't want anything on septic. And I think it's just the idea of the septic tank and the having to clean it and stuff. I would say then they're not educated at all. And this is actually a huge opportunity for realtors, for the real estate association to, really get behind you, because this is, I had I mean, we all knew that with sea level rise, the septic tanks were definitely becoming an issue. And obviously doing, on the beach and being involved in the Miami Beach Chamber, which had a lot to do with the sea level rise. And then after they were built the pump stations, you were even out with clients. I think I told Casey that yesterday, like, in West Avenue on Bayfront condos, and seeing the runoff, and you're going, oh, what's that, and of course, you can always smell it in the air, and etc. So I think that great. When I guess that started to hit the news, so like, okay, we're getting it out of the streets. That's great, but now it's got nowhere to go, and we're pumping it into the bay, and it's making things much worse for the bay. But no, I would say that people are not. From now I got thinking about it too, going, oh, you know what? I should get a landscaper that is also knows these things, no phosphates, or maybe uses. I've done that with, I only use like natural vinegar weed killer and stuff like that, or I pull the weeds. I don't fertilize my lawn, but
you're already,
well, but that's just, to be honest, that was more of a conscientiousness about the harm chemicals are doing us in general, right? And going like, and hearing about Roundup and all the cancer cases, etc. But with the bay, I had, reporting things or keeping all that in mind. Now I'm going, okay, I want a landscaper that understands that, or that I can educate about this. And this is a product I want you to use. I do that with my cleaning lady. It's like, this is we're not going to have these harsh chemicals or something like that. I don't want that in the house. It's not necessary. Actually, a lot of the natural stuff out there, who knows, maybe in 20 years time we'll find out it wasn't good for you either, but so but no, that would be a huge thing to give that Compass's brochure to people, send them a little video as a closing, saying, hey, you bought your beautiful waterfront home, your beautiful bayfront condo, your beautiful home,
Donate to Miami Waterkeeper.
Yeah, well, no, exactly. Yeah, I'm serious. I want to do that because, like I said, I'm passionate about the plants and stuff, but, this is a whole nother, it's a fantastic angle, and hopefully people, will embrace it. I don't know what they're going to do about the septic tanks, though.
They're going to fix them. They're going to fix them.
Oh, God. It took I was involved in Miami Shores, the chamber, 2004, and they wanted to change downtown, which has finally happened because it had beautiful, also historic architecture. Actually, one of the developers of Miami Beach, one of the developers, early Miami Shores as well. And I was on the Historic Preservation Board. It's a very interesting city because they did a lot of the planning based on Mediterranean cities, and they did their research, the big boulevards and all that kind of stuff. But it took, forever for the septic. Like for one shopping center.
They couldn't rezone because of the septic.
Exactly. And then they'd have to have what they call it, auxiliary, like septic tanks and in order. And they finally did it. And now, you know what, people are like, oh, a friend of mine said, oh, downtown Miami Shores is full of people thriving, actually, because you've got more restaurants now and all that kind of stuff. So, that, and El Portal, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe they all got onto sewer.
They're in the midst of a big project. And actually Miami Shores has a project coming as well, Miami Shores Estates.
Oh, okay.
They got funding to do septic to sewer there too. So it's coming piece by piece. And actually Miami Waterkeeper is starting a major research initiative.
Okay.
Looking at the Biscayne Canal and Little River, Arch Creek, and all these canals in North Biscayne Bay, looking at the nutrient levels and bacteria levels to try to understand where they're coming from, where the hotspots are and all that kind of stuff. So
oh, wow.
Look out for that.
I know, very exciting.
Yeah. Case, do we have any questions that folks have had for us, or?
Just
We're happy to keep chatting if not.
just one question. When is the fertilizer ordinance for Miami-Dade County going to be put into place? Is it immediately? Is it?
Yeah, so it's law now, but the blackout period for the summer is not going to go into effect until the end of October this year. So it'll actually kick in next May 15th. So we have a year to do outreach and education and collect some baseline data on the water quality to make sure everybody knows this is coming.
This is another really good question. Do you see people moving inland because of sea level rise? This is for Rachel and for Madeline, actually.
Madeline?
Definitely it is. I've had out of town buyers that it was definitely a concern for them. And I mean, obviously the waterfront, you know, especially the way that everybody's been dropping huge money in Miami and the surrounding cities, they are not that concerned. And I mean, I think people are obviously raising seawalls or the new construction is leading the way. But other people I've had, they're like, I don't want anything near, you know, that, you know, at risk. I want to definitely, there's, we have actually a buyer from San Francisco that that was a big concern for them. And so we have a map where we can get the elevation of each property. Obviously, I know a lot, like I know which side of the gables or the Belmead, Morningside, you know, because there's a coral ridge that runs, you know, and yes, I think more and more people are concerned about that. And it certainly is going to present more and more of a challenge for the more historic structures, and obviously preservationists versus, you know, and this is actually something interesting that this guy came from Louisiana, and every realtor, he said, they need to get the elevation for the house when they get the listing. So that's a big part of the selling process. And then he was doing raising houses. That was his business after obviously Katrina. And so it became much more of a focus over there. And maybe down the road, you know, we'll get to that point as well. You know, I mean, not raising them, you know, another story high, but raising them enough to, you know, obviously survive sea level rise, etc.
We have another question. What are the major forms of infrastructure in place to protect homes from sea level rise? Rachel?
Well, I think sea level rise, you know, oftentimes we think of it as the flooded streets that we saw and things like that. But it can also affect what's going on underground in the sewage pipes, with septic tanks, with our power infrastructure from Turkey Point, with our drinking water supply that's stored in the holes in the rocks underground. So we really have to think holistically about how sea level rise is affecting potentially all areas of our lives here in Miami and really start preparing for it. So we're really advocating for sewage infrastructure upgrades, these septic tank renovations, the stormwater. We are really looking also at how we can implement green infrastructure that both makes you know, the community more lush and verdant, with like mangroves and dunes and coral reefs that are thriving, that protect us from sea level rise, as well with a combination of upgrading our infrastructure. So it's what we call a gray-green solution, where we incorporate nature as part of the answer to dealing with sea level rise as well. If you think about the end of Miami Beach at South Point Park, you know how they have that big dune that you can walk on top of. So that's, you know, they built that dune, but they incorporated, you know, natural dune life into the construction project, and it actually is maintaining itself. It's actually growing, which is what sand dunes are supposed to do, and it's protecting from storm surge and sea level rise as well.
Certainly. I'm always surprised, and I said to my husband like 15 years ago, why don't we invent a roof tile that has solar in it? Which actually
Elon Musk did.
What?
which Elon Musk did.
Yes, well, no, and Corning has one. And it's just, why are we not installing that more? Why? I don't understand, like growing up, again in Europe, a lot of houses had cisterns to collect water, and then you use that water for the sprinklers, right? You know, so it's like you're kind of recycling, you're not taking water out of the ground. It's more green. I mean, maybe you could even, and then the other thing I saw in the paper the other day, in the paper and online, the Herald, they did some big, some big installation of solar panels, and that the batteries are holding much more charge now for that, so that it's really much more of an off thing. Gosh, I wish I could remember. But I mean, this, you know, we got to do, I think, all of this to, you know, take advantage of our natural thing. And another thing they were saying, this in the Caribbean, I think there's some places where they have the wind power, you know.
Yeah, Miami's a great place for solar.
Yeah, well, I mean, exactly.
Well, to that question also, I did include a link to some policy recommendations. It's a lot of like higher level diction, and it's very scientific, but that is something we pulled together. Rachel, this was for the candidate briefing that we had last year. So for candidates for office, we held these briefings right around the time of the fish kill, and it was very timely. And we wanted to basically brief them on what's going on, so if and when elected, they'd be able to put these policy recommendations into place. So we have put together a PDF that's available on our website of all those recommendations, short-term, long-term goals, county goals, all of that. And it's compiled in the link that I put in the chat. So those are some other things that we can continue to urge for, and, you know, urge change for, but there's definitely a lot to be done. Another question. Tourists are a big part of Miami. How do you communicate environmental protection to tourists?
Is that for me?
Go ahead. Yes, you go.
You know, that's a good question, because it can be hard to reach tourists because they're not really digesting our, you know, social media and things like that. But, you know, they are a really key piece of the economy. And I think over 80% of tourists that visit Miami go in the water while they're here. So it's a really important piece of bringing tourists in. And I think, you know, maybe an idea would be to work with hotels. Like we have a partnership actually for Earth Day with the Standard, for example, to communicate messaging when people are visiting the hotel about being water safe while they're here, or if they go out boating, things like that.
Yeah, and then I think
yeah, definitely the hotels. I know that for one hotel, for example, I mean, that is very much about, I think many of the hotels in Miami Beach, they have recycling programs in place. You know, so obviously that's being you know, communicated to the tourists. I would say, you know, they have to, you know, just picking up after yourself on the beach. You know, there's always people that are doing, you know, I know a friend of mine, she goes almost every day to the beach and picks up garbage, you know, and I think more recycling and renewable, I mean, like solar energy. So, and I think more messages maybe on the bay and stuff like that, to just ask people to keep it clean.
Well, thanks, Madeline. This has been so much fun to chat with you.
You too. Thank you. It was really amazing.
Yeah, and hopefully we can stay in touch and
definitely, absolutely,
and work on next steps together. And you know, we would love to partner with the real estate community and the chamber, and
this is
a lot
really
of projects
important.
together. Well, fantastic. We have our contact info. We look forward to continuing the conversation. Everybody watching, you also have our contact info, so don't hesitate to reach out to us and get involved with everything.
And thank you for doing this, and thank you all for doing this for the community. It's really, really important. Thank you.
No, it's our pleasure. And don't forget your Save the Bay Compass hats that go to support Miami Waterkeeper.
All
They're
right,
super
thank
cute.
you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.